Oi, what's the best game where you get to eat pie? What's the best game where you play a dead guy? Aye, you'll find out in VG247's podcast. Here, what's the best game where you swing from a rope? And what's the best game where you batter the Pope? Assassin's Creed 2. Like I said, you will find out in this here podcast. This is the Best Games Ever podcast by VG247, the game where we try to find the best video game within a very specific category. For example, this week we're looking for the best game that everyone loves except you. On the subject of things that people love to a weird degree that you find, frankly, quite baffling, we get a lot of comments every day about when is Tom coming back to the podcast? Why isn't Tom on this podcast? Why isn't Tom in this video? Well, he is in this one. It's Tom Ori. We get that comment even when you're in the thing, which I find baffling.
I mean, I was in a very senior meeting the other day.
Yeah.
Like the most important people in the company.
Yeah.
And it was basically just turned into how much they love me on the podcast. So I don't want to big myself up too much, but yeah, maybe just don't run it when I'm not on.
Maybe you should what? Sorry,
don't run the show. Just don't have
run
an
it.
episode.
Tom, you won last week, which didn't prove controversial because unless you win, everyone in the comments kicks off. But you won. Tom's fans aren't necessarily toxic. They just really like Tom to a degree that's, as I say, frankly,
it's
baffling.
Surprising. It is surprising.
It is surprising because you don't really do much. You just sort of sit there looking really stoic.
There's not enough of that. There's not enough of that in the world, is there? Everyone's trying to be the loud American. The best thing you can be these days, the most punk thing you can be, is just a wee quiet guy who just sits there not doing much, which you've got nailed, actually. All right, let's move on. All right, the best game that everyone loves except you. I'm sure everyone's got one of these where it comes up and you think, I don't get it. I've never got it. For a lot of people, it's Assassin's Creed, isn't it? Every time Assassin's Creed comes up, we always get the odd Twitter reply or whatever where someone's like, who plays Assassin's Creed? Who cares about Assassin's Creed? And it's hundreds of millions of people, so many people you wouldn't believe. That's why they make 60 of them a fucking year. Or they did. Anyway, right, okay. Rebecca, you're going to go first this week.
Oh.
I hope you're ready for that.
Yeah, why not?
So what is your example of this phenomenon, a game that everyone loves except you?
This is always an intimidating question if you work in games media, and there's a little extra frisson of danger as well when you're the only woman on the panel, as I am today. People tend to have a really, really interesting response to you saying that you do like things. So goodness knows when you say you don't like something, it's really painting the target on your own back.
That is intimidating,
So I've decided to just, really go all out, really go therapeutic with this, and admit to, there's a number of games I could have picked for this, honestly. Quite near the top of my mind was Elden Ring, because I'm not into Souls-likes. And everyone told me this is the game to get you into Souls-likes, and it didn't. And then everyone was like, actually, maybe it's a really bad beginner Souls-like. And I'm like, yeah, maybe it was. But that's a bit too obvious because, I'm not into Souls-likes. This is a game that didn't change my mind. I was like, it's not really a fair point of comparison. But one game that I went into fully expecting to adore because I love the genre and just bounced really hard off the whole series is the Uncharted series. So I think that's going to have to be my pick because I started playing those games because I love Tomb Raider. Famously, it's one of the 10 to 20 franchises that I bang on about all the time. And everyone was like, if you love Tomb Raider and you've played all of Tomb Raider to death, Uncharted will so be for you. It's obviously it's inspired, I would say, by the success of Tomb Raider, but also has the same inspirations more broadly in things like Indiana Jones and those sort of fun 80s action movies about archaeologists and about, working a bit of mysticism into those narratives. And I played the first one and I really, really did not get along with it at all. I finished it. But I was so convinced I was going to love this series that I actually bought, before they released the trilogy as one easily consumable trilogy, I went and bought all 3 games that were out at the time. Individually, put the work in to go and track them all down. I'm gonna play all 3 of these in a row. I'm gonna love it because it's more Tomb Raider. And I finished the first one. I think I played a little bit of the second one, and I still haven't gone back to it. And it's sad to me, and I do understand. I from an objective viewpoint, Uncharted 2 in particular is one of the most lauded games of the 2010s, right? So you can't deny that both critics and fans loved those games, but they just did not click with me in the way that I had expected, and it was a sad experience. But I still respect that they're beloved games and get why, but just not to me.
Do you think it's because, I'm just speculating, but do you think it might be because like Lara Croft as a central character is just more appealing than Nathan Drake?
Part of it was that I didn't really click with any of the main characters particularly, except Sully I quite liked, but Nate and is it Elena or Alana? I can never remember.
Elena, I think.
Yeah. Elena. Nate and Elena I just didn't really like, but it was also like just the gameplay didn't, and I've heard people say, oh, the gameplay in 1 isn't the one to try and get into the series 2. Like,
that is true.
But I don't know, it was not an inspiring start, and as we discussed on last week's podcast, like there were hundreds of games competing for your attention. And it is a hard barrier to get over if you play the first game in this lauded series and don't love it. It's kind of hard to push through and say, well, I'll try again with the second game and I'll try and finish the trilogy when there are so many other things that you want to be playing as well.
Yeah,
so while
like
Uncharted
Animal Crossing.
Yeah. I got to make room for the 70 hours of Animal Crossing I still play a year. You know, that's got to be taken into consideration.
Yeah.
It's still, you know, I haven't got rid of my copies of Uncharted. I do really want to. I really want to play Lost Legacy because that does look like if anything's going to kind of bring me back around on the series, it'll probably be Lost Legacy.
It is, yeah.
But I fully expect that it is. But I still I can't remember how many years ago it was that I played the first Uncharted, but I just still haven't got back into it after that.
Do you know what, actually, right? I know this isn't what the podcast is about, so apologies, Tom. We're not allowed to just be like, X game is good, here's why. Miller tried that when he was on at Christmas, and you shut him right down. You were like, excuse me, this isn't about how much you like Gears of War. No, but genuinely, Lost Legacy is, I think, probably the best Uncharted game they've ever done. And probably the best jumping on point because it's
That's
got
good to know. That is genuinely good to know.
Yeah, it's genuinely like it's a good sort of like they've got the formula down. Like they've nailed the gunplay, they've nailed the ratio. Like it's not just like, because the thing about the first Uncharted game infamously is that it's like you do a bit of the exploring and then it's like you've got a 40-minute gunfight before you get to the next bit.
Yeah, the gunfights just were the main thing that turned me off, to be honest. I could have forgiven Nate and Alana for not being protagonists that I was super into immediately if the gunfights hadn't been just so
100%.
They drag, they really drag, and that was the main thing for me that just turned me off that series.
They do. The combat does absolutely drag that game down. I think it's entirely fair to say. But I would say, like, I actually would really be interested in whether or not you got into Lost Legacy because there's loads of stuff in there for people who like the series, but as a jumping on point, it's very like you really don't need much prior knowledge. You know who Nathan Drake is.
It's got more exploration, I would say. That even though it's smaller, it feels like you're doing more exploring.
Yeah,
it's what I like about some of the more modern Tomb Raiders is that you get a sense of exploration, which Uncharted doesn't really do. Particularly the more recent, like 4. I almost picked Uncharted. I was close, but I thought I actually do quite like 2 and Lost Legacy. So it was a bit, wasn't sure, but I think it's a very good choice.
Oh, that's just so nice. I really thought this was going to be a very contentious episode, and it's been like supportive, and I've come out with like a nice reaffirmation recommendation to just jump onto the game. I'm interested in the series. This is so pleasant.
Go for it.
It's very nice. Thank you, guys.
Yeah, because you tend to expect Tom to just like be really mean, but
I've got to wait until the conclusions and I'll bring some stuff out.
It's like that's a top Tom interaction. That was really nice.
Yeah, they're usually terrible. Okay, right, let's move on. Tom, you're going last. Mark, what have you got for this?
If it's Uncharted, I will laugh.
It is along similar lines to yours, just in terms of rationalization, but it's the original Mass Effect.
Wow, okay.
It's one of those games that I didn't play during my childhood for no particular reason. And I came back to it in 2021 because they released the complete edition or trilogy or whatever that's basically Mass Effect 1, 2, 3, and then I think Andromeda isn't included. But basically I was like, right, I'll buy that. Everybody's told me that this is the kind of big RPG that's up my alley, like things that I've liked before. I've got a decent kind of background when it comes to sci-fi stuff. I grew up with parents that were mad, well, at least one parent that was mad into Star Wars, and Star Trek and Battlestar Galactica and 9 million other series from the 80s that are about blokes in space doing things and getting up to
Sorry,
mischief.
are you one of my children? I've got so many, it might not be.
It's, yeah. That's the thing. So I went into it thinking, right, I like the kind of game it is. I like sci-fi stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And I just went in, played through that first game, and literally I've played 17 hours of it, which is the exact amount of time that it took me to finish the main quest. Because I went through it and I was just like, this world, it didn't grab me in the way that I expected it to. And I don't know if it's because I went in with the expectations of having had people say, it's such an interesting, diverse world, there's so many interesting alien creatures, all of that, that I expected to be blown away by it and just wasn't. And I don't know if it was just that or I didn't gel with the companions as much as I could have. And then again, I might have ruined it by the play style that I went for, because my default RPG character is basically a sniper with high charisma, because the strategy is just charm up front, a 50 caliber bullet from afar, and that's basically what I went through with like a laser sniper instead of your average 50 cal, and it just made all of the combat thingies, because there weren't really any long range sniping sections. All I was doing was crouching in a corner and just looking down the scope and going bang, bang, bang.
I was going to say, bang. I mean, high charisma would do you well in Mass Effect, but sniper, no, because in the first Mass Effect, as you say, there's no environment big enough to warrant a fucking scope on a gun.
That's what I mean, because I spent half the game running away from things to get the distance that I needed to be able to shoot them before they got to me.
Yeah,
like basically, I role played as a very nice coward. But yes, it's one of those things where, I mean, I think 2 is the one where people say the series really gets going, and that's basically the one where if you play it and you don't like it, then there's a real problem. But after playing through that, I felt like I needed a palate cleanser a bit, and I've just never gone back and played through the rest of the trilogy. I will eventually, but yeah, that's mine as of now.
To be honest, right, Mass Effect 2 is I'm perfectly willing to accept that it is the best one of the 3 for all the reasons that people say it's the best one of the 3, but the first one is like the first one for me is like the most pure version of that vision of like a BioWare RPG that's a bit like Star Trek, that's a bit like Battlestar, etc. And all the games since that have been kind of like a dilution of that to some extent. Like the second game is like, oh, we have to make it a bit more Gears of War-y because everyone said the combat was shite in the first one.
They changed it for people like me. Like I played the first one, I put it on easy and just run through blasting people from close range.
Yeah.
That's all I did. I'd literally like speed run it essentially just to get through the story.
Yeah.
So I could play the second one, which was meant to be better for people like me, and I never played it.
And I find it funny that the one thing people hate about the first one is the Mako, and specifically what you do in the Mako, which is having to explore all those kind of desolate planets on which there isn't much. And I think it's really funny that, like, 15 years later, Bethesda comes out with a game that is mostly like, what if we get people to explore desolate planetscapes on which there isn't much, and we don't even give them a fucking car? And of course, everyone hated it. They hated it in Mass Effect, and you were in a tank. You could shoot stuff. So we've got Uncharted, the first Uncharted, I guess, just submitting Rebecca for Rebecca. We've got the first Mass Effect. Strong showing from first ones in a trilogy that generally are accepted to be not as good as the rest of it. Tom, what have you got?
I've got a better choice than those, for reasons I'll get into later.
Right, okay.
I just want to say that I'm retiring the pastry story. Right, it's time to move on from that. There'll be mixed reactions to that, I imagine. Mark looked genuinely devastated when I said that. Other people will feel the same. Other people will be like, thank God that's stopping.
There was a comment the other day when someone said it was on the Jim Trinker Discord actually. When Tom starts the pastry story, I skip ahead.
I mean, he missed out some good moments, I would say. But the reason I'm retiring it is because And I couldn't say it in the earlier podcast we recorded, which was probably last week's one, because I wanted to have one final go at the story. But something happened this morning on my the school run, right?
Okay.
So this is the new story that's going to be running for weeks.
Okay. All right, thank you, Tom.
So, before I get to my choice, I've got a little thing to say about what happened this morning. So, if you're aware, in the UK there was some snow recently, mostly where I am. Yesterday, this morning it had mostly gone, right? So yesterday was a pain because it was like my son was jumping up and down on the way home from school, and I was like, stop doing that because you're going to fall over and hurt yourself. He was like, I want to have fun. I was like, just stop it. You're going to hurt yourself. And he was like, well, I want to. He said to me, I may never see snow again. And I was like, I don't care. Just don't fall over and hurt yourself.
It's oddly like the most like Tom Ory's son thing to say. Of course, your son said something like that.
But he was more like trying to make me feel bad that I was telling him not to break an arm on the concrete. But anyway, this morning it'd mostly gone. I was still a bit like, don't you jump on that drain cover because you're going to slip off it and break your leg or back or arm. And then he was like, I don't care. And he started running down the grassy verge at the edge of the pavement to experience the snow one last time in his life. And then he was like, I said, do not scoop any up, right? I'm quite strict with him in terms of, like, I'm a different person with my kids to how I am elsewhere, because I don't want them to hurt themselves mostly. I live in fear that they're going to run into a wall or fall over and hurt themselves, right? And I was like, don't pick up the snow. You don't know what's under there, right? And somehow, this was very, like, I was foreshadowing what was to happen later this day. Because we got further down, there's a road that took forever to cross, as always. Like, I just stood there, like, someone let me go across this road. 5 minutes later, somehow we get across. And over that, there's a big grassy area. And there were some kids in there messing around. Like, it was mostly ice at this point, but as it's the last snow they were going to see, they were messing around in it. They'd scooped up some bits and they were throwing it at each other. And one of them kept trying to get some stuff off their hand, right?
Yeah.
Like, I don't know, like dirt, presumably. But oh no, as you might imagine, this was not dirt. Yeah, this was a dog turd, right? And just as I had warned my son, do not scoop up stuff here, because we walk this path, we walk this route every day. Dog owners, as much as many of them are very responsible, many of them are not. This child had literally scooped up a dog turd in his hand and had thrown the dog turd at his friend.
Yeah.
That's it. That's my story. I don't know how I'm going to spin this into many other stories, but I think it just sums up snow in the UK, really, doesn't it? Or at least in England, where it's just quite miserable, snow.
Were there any croissants involved?
No.
Okay.
No.
All right.
Just a dog turd. I don't know if that's a good story or not, but I just had to tell it because,
right. Okay.
Like, it's just everything I fear about snow. I mean, if the other kid had fallen over, broken his arm, it'd have summed up everything, and I'd have gone see to my son, and he'd have got the message then, wouldn't he?
Yeah.
But I think he just thought it was amusing.
I was going to say, like, accidentally picking up a shite and throwing it at your mate is quite funny.
Yeah.
Because, it's a blameless, it's not a victimless crime, but it's a blameless one. So
I'd have gone, if I'd have been the parents, I'd have gone, I told you that would happen. And it did happen. Yeah. My son once, we were at a zoo, and he put his hand across a railing just because it was beyond the point where you're meant to put your hands, right? It was like, don't put your hands here because the monkeys might bite them off, whatever.
Yeah.
And he put his hand, I said, do not put your hand across that. And he did it. And he had a load of monkey poo in his hand.
All of these stories involve shit. Have you noticed that?
There's a lot around. If you look, there's just lots of it everywhere.
Right. Okay, Tom. What is your pick for the topic of the podcast?
I had two games in mind, right? The first one, which I didn't go with, was Horizon, the PlayStation exclusive series. Depending on when you look, you'd get the impression that it's the greatest adventure action series of all time.
Yeah.
Right? And I just find it quite tedious to play.
Bafflingly
I don't get that. It feels like a lot of hassle to play this game for me. To play it really well, you have to be really stealthy and set up all the traps and do all the stuff, and I can't be bothered with that. I like the idea of the world, and I like the designs, and I can understand why they made the Lego version of that big one. But it's just a bit boring for me. I don't like it. But the bigger one for me, and this is something I've felt ever since this whole series came to be many, many years ago, is Monster Hunter, right? Monster Hunter has become a big deal in recent years. It's huge. People love it. People play it all the time. I imagine most people that work here love Monster Hunter. The most recent one I played is World, right? And that's the one I'm putting forward because it's the one that everyone was like, this is amazing. We're all going to play it together. It's great fun. Doesn't matter if you didn't like the other ones because it's a bit more like streamlined, etc. It's not as like hard to get into. It's still completely baffling to me. It's clunky. Don't understand it.
World was the one where people were like, this series has finally come home, and and
it did really well, obviously, and lots of people clearly do love it, which is the reason why I chose it. I do not like it. I can't get into it. Feels like a bit of a janky game, and I reviewed the very first Monster Hunter on PS2, right? When it was like you had to plug in a massive thing into your PS2 to get it to play online and stuff, the broadband adapter, or whatever it was called, right? Back when PS2 games and they all had their own little logins and separate services and kind of stuff. And I think I gave the original Monster Hunter 5 out of 10.
Yeah.
Did not like it at all. And I was like, I never thought I'd see that again. 20 years later, it's one of the biggest things, possibly the biggest thing Capcom's ever done, maybe now. I just don't understand it at all. And like, I'm playing basically what is the newest big version of it. I know Rise came out and stuff. I haven't played that. But this is like a modern Monster Hunter game. And it's still, to me, I'm sure it's far more streamlined and accessible than the original was. I can't get into it. I find it baffling that so many people enjoy it. And like, is there some kind of like mass kind of, I'm not sure what the word is, but when everyone believes something to be true, when it's not, like everyone loves it because everyone loves it, so you must love it.
Are you arguing that people liking Monster Hunter is a mass delusion?
Yes. I guess the only way I can I don't know, I can explain it in my head is that I don't get it. You look at it and think, this looks cool. I'm going to be a big person with some cool weapons. I'm going to jump around, smash monsters on the head with a big axe, swing around with a grappling hook, whatever. Sounds cool, looks cool, and then you play it. I'm like, nope.
It's like a Doctor Who plot, isn't it?
I feel like I'm going to potentially put my head on the block here because last time I did this, it literally handed the win to someone else. But yeah, Monster Hunter was on my sort of shortlist for this as well. Again, shocking amount of consensus in this episode.
There is.
It's weird to me because like the reason that I didn't like it was because I like games about cute animals and I consider the monsters cute animals and I didn't like having to kill them. But like other people who are, I'm a vegetarian but not for ethical reasons, but other people I know who are like vegetarian for ethical reasons are totally into Monster Hunter, which is the part where I get really baffled.
It's about like, literally like killing a bunch of animals for their meat, essentially a gamified version of running an abattoir, except anyway. So full disclosure, I worked on Monster Hunter World. I did some of the marketing videos and stuff for it. And, we did a lot of traveling with them, my company at the time. So I just want to get that out there before anyone accuses me of...
more like a sales pitch for yourself, or what does it matter, Jim?
No, I'm just going
to go back and go, you worked on that game,
didn't you, Jim? It's just full disclosure. So if Tom wins...
I'm not recommending it, are we?
But, if... I'm just saying that, for the sake of proprietary and putting everything, making sure everything's above board, I did work on that game. Right. Anyway, okay, so I've got to pick something now. So we've got Monster Hunter World specifically.
World, yeah.
Mass Effect from Mark and the first Uncharted game from Rebecca.
Right, just before you carry on, Jim, I said I had some stuff to say about this at this point.
Okay.
So I think if you look at all these games, there's a very clear reason why my choice is best, right?
Okay.
I have picked a modern game.
Yeah.
It's a modern game. Monster Hunter World's a few years old, but it's a modern game. It's released on modern consoles.
Yeah.
It was of the current era. Yeah.
Right.
Uncharted is a PS3 game. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
Old. It's an old game now. Don't know when that came out. It's an old game.
None of this actually has any bearing on it, but okay, yeah.
Xbox 360 game.
Yeah.
Old game.
Yeah.
And both of these games, as far as I can gather from what was said earlier, were played sometime after they were released.
Yeah.
Right? So
I see where you're going.
You're looking at them through the modern lens of how games are played, right?
Yeah.
And judging them based on what you think about games now, not what they were like then. So my argument is that you can't compare them fairly because you're looking at them through, like, I could say loads of games from the past are rubbish, because they probably are. Mark
is like 15, so you know, Rebecca, I got the impression that you played Uncharted when it was still like a PS3 series, essentially, right?
Yeah, I played it on the PS3. I think it was a few years after release because the first three games were already out. I would, however, like to say that if you handed me right now a PC capable of running the original Tomb Raider with its tank controls, I would pick that up and love it. And I would love a new Tomb Raider on a modern console. Like, this is not an issue of what I feel is like.
That's because you played the original with the tank controls years ago,
I
right?
think you're barking up the wrong tree with this one, Tom. I do see where you're going, but I would argue. Mark, what was the first version of the original Mass Effect that you played? Was it the 360 version?
No, it was the complete edition. But I do like plenty of games from the kind of late 2000s. I love Oblivion.
I just wanted to double check that point, because I would say that it depends how you define a modern game, but I would say that Uncharted and Mass Effect are pretty modern games in the sense that gaming, blockbuster AAA sort of gaming of the type that they are, has not changed radically since those games
I think they have. Mass Effect in particular.
They haven't, though, have they?
Literally, they changed the whole way the game plays in the second one.
No, they didn't.
They did.
They changed.
They made it into something that felt more like a shooter. They changed
the structure of the game. They improved the combat and things like that. But it was still like a third-person shooter with RPG elements. The first Uncharted game, certainly it has balancing issues in the sense of the ratios between how much time you spend in like annoying combat sections versus how much time you spend in the interesting like exploration and you know, like character stuff, which is the stuff that everyone actually loves about those games. But they didn't know that and then there was an adjustment that happened. But like mechanically, they're pretty fucking similar to the games that came after.
Basically, what I'm saying is, all old games are shit, right? So bringing any single one up doesn't mean anything.
Yeah.
But I'm saying only certain new games are shit.
I mean, I would
Which
argue.
makes my point better.
I would argue that basically every game before 2003 is shite, but that's by the by. Okay, look, I don't accept your argument, Tom. I actually don't accept it. I don't accept the argument that the definitive edition release of Mass Effect isn't a modern game, because it looks and plays basically like a modern game. I won't accept that the first Uncharted game isn't ostensibly a modern game, because
it's a retro game now.
It's not a retro.
Yes, it is.
It might be a retro. It might be a retro game in terms of like the fact that it was on PS3, but game design hasn't changed radically since Uncharted.
Do you work in game design, do you, Jim? You game designer. I know you worked on Monster Hunter. What did you do to game design on it?
I didn't do game design. No, of course I didn't. Of course I didn't. When I say I worked on it, I didn't really work on it. I worked near it. Right, Monster Hunter's out, as far as I'm concerned, because I actually agree with you, Tom. I'm baffled by Monster Hunter as well, despite having worked on it. Never going to work for Capcom again, but that's fine. I'm baffled by Monster Hunter because I try to play those games and I feel the same way as you. Like, well, this is baffling and impenetrable, and I don't understand why. I don't understand what the hook is here. What's interesting about Uncharted and Mass Effect is I love both those games, right? But the first Uncharted game, I know, is not as good as the rest of the series, as we talked about. I do love the first Uncharted, but I kind of love it despite itself.
The thing about the first Uncharted that gets me is that when that game came out, nobody talks about like, oh, the shooting's great. Nobody said that. In fact, they said quite the opposite. And nobody said, I just really love Nathan Drake as a character. He's interesting and windswept and dreamy, and nobody said that. People said he's kind of an asshole and a mass murderer. But what people did say was, we love Sully, because of course everyone loves Sully.
Yeah.
And they said, we love the fact that when you get Nathan Drake wet and then he comes out of the water, he still looks wet. And so people would get him wet and then get him onto dry land and go, look, he still looks wet, because we'd never seen that before.
It's because he's a massive wet wipe.
This is a whole other conversation, but I'm hungry and I don't want to get into it. I want to go and get lunch.
You can definitely make the argument that it's not as good as the games that follow it. As much as I like it, purely on the strength of it not being as good a game as the original Mass Effect, I think the original Mass Effect is a wonderful game. And I think it still holds up, and I think it's still the best Mass Effect game for a lot of reasons. I think they massively improved as action games, but I think as RPGs, and as games that were sort of meant to be set in this giant galaxy that you were meant to feel was like the host of this like diverse, multifaceted and enormous civilization, I don't think Mass Effect 2 and 3 did as good a job as the first game of getting that across. So I think it kind of, it depends what you're looking for with games, but I think you can make an argument with the Mass Effect trilogy that any one of them is actually the best game. So I'm going to give it to Mark. I think Mass Effect is the best game of the three that have been presented, and I think it's a really good example of the topic, because like I get why people might not like Mass Effect despite loving it personally. So yeah, well done, Mark. That was pretty good. You picked an RPG that you know I like, and it worked. So right.
Hold on, is that Mark's second? Is that your second win?
Second win?
It turns out the secret is just to pick things that I know Jim likes rather than things that I like.
Yeah, I just feel like kind of bad for you, because it's like you got to win on the basis of, because of the format of this episode, like having the worst opinion.
Yeah, I can't win without losing. It's my life.
Oh, I feel really bad.
Every loser wins. Okay, right. We have to go to the gym section now, which will be a premium section at some point soon. More on that later. But we have to listen to the theme, which we didn't do last week because it was a new year and I wanted to spare everyone. But unfortunately, I guarantee nobody can read that.
Not a clue.
Right? My handwriting's terrible and it's backwards for other people, but right, Metal Gear Solid brackets any is what that says.
Oh
right?
No.
So
yeah, I think you've won. Just let's call it done. They're not paying for it yet, so we can just cut it now.
Yeah,
There's
it's fine.
No
it's
one
fine.
to be angry.
They're not paying for it yet, so it's like, all right, okay, see you later. Mass Effect is Mass Effect. Metal Gear Solid is objectively, I know what it's got going for it. I understand that the first Metal Gear Solid game was kind of like the dawn of like the cinematic fucking action blockbuster game. Pretty much lots of things I love really owe a lot to Metal Gear Solid, particularly Assassin's Creed, which I think the comparison isn't made often enough. But Assassin's Creed has this, sort of baffling technological sort of meta story and all that kind of stuff. And I really like the idea of the Metal Gear Solid series, and I really enjoy reading about it and reading summaries of it and watching YouTube videos about it. But to play, man, they are all dog shit. I tried playing Metal Gear Solid 2 because everyone was like, the remaster came out and everyone was like, right, get the remaster and play Metal Gear Solid 2.
Which
it's the
remaster?
best one. The 360 remaster that they brought out, the trilogy.
Just the HD remake.
Yeah, the HD remake. Yeah,
right.
And they were like, everyone said, all my friends are into Metal Gear Solid, and everyone said to me, get onto Metal Gear Solid 2, you'll love it. It's like, it's sci-fi, it's fucking James Bond, it's metafiction, it's a hodgepodge of things that you basically like. So have at it. And what I experienced was a game where it takes fucking 16 button presses to shoot a gun. And it's like, I can't be fucked with this anymore, lads. It's done.
100% agree.
Yeah, so...
This is the first time we've ever said we've had an agreement of anything.
Is it?
I think so.
Well, Rebecca was saying earlier it's a very positive episode, so yeah.
Yeah, we've all really bonded here. It's been nice.
I understand why people like it, and I understand what's good about it, and I enjoy a lot of the things about it.
Which one? 2?
2 in particular, I would submit, yeah.
I'd say 2. I think 1, you can argue that actually 1's still quite good because it still hasn't gone down because of the limitations of the PS1. It had to play a certain way, and it worked because of that. Whereas when they tried to make them sort of modern with actual aiming and shooting from like how you might expect those games to play, no, they went all wrong. Even they admitted it basically in 3, right? Because 3, they released it was terrible, and they then re-released it and gave you a different way of playing it, which made it sort of okay, but still mostly terrible.
But it can't win for one specific reason. Without Metal Gear Solid, we wouldn't have some of the most bizarre segments in Game Awards history. We wouldn't be able to laugh at a man desperately trying to persuade another man to come into a room and do a thing to prove their love for each other every single year. And therefore, because it leads to good things down the line, it can't win.
Well, is it, Tom, you decide the rules of this podcast. Is it possible for me to ever win these episodes, or am I just revealing what I would have picked if I was a contestant?
I mean, I don't know. I think it'd have to be unanimous.
That's never going to happen, is it?
Honestly, Mark's rationale has talked me off again. I think we would be better off as a society without those Game Awards segments. I truly believe this. So I'm back to Mass Effect if it counts.
I reviewed 4 in Konami's office, and it was the worst experience of my life because I was sat there playing it, and I was like, what? I can't. The control, like this is 4 is the most modern feeling of all of them, right? It's the most like other games, and I was still like, what am I doing? What do the buttons do? Like, why is it like this? Why have they made this game deliberately annoying to play? And I was like, this is good. Yeah, this is good to all the people in the room. Yeah, excellent. I was like, what's going on? Why? And I thankfully got to take it home and finish the rest of it.
We're going to leave it there, but thank you very much for tuning in. And if you think I should win, then just say that in the comments. Nobody's going to say that, are they? But very worthy winner, Mark. I think from now on, the extended version of the podcast will be a premium one if you're a subscriber.
Hopefully. We haven't really decided. Maybe let us know if you'd be willing to pay an amount similar to £2.99 a month for the extra segment on all the podcasts.
But it won't just be the extra segment for 4 podcasts a month, Tom. What other benefits do they get for that $2.99 a month?
Ad-free browsing on the website.
Yeah.
A wonderful benefit that anyone would want. Yeah. But really, it's about the podcast because that's the only thing people really, we hope, would be willing to pay any amount of money for, because people don't like paying for things on websites, do they?
No.
It's just that people are just mean like that. They don't like paying for things that people write.
I mean, I love it. Reselling.
So if you, hopefully, at least a few of you will be like, I don't mind paying $2.99 a month, right? What is that? You can't even buy maybe if you went to like a scout run thing on a fair, you could buy a coffee for that. Yeah, maybe. But you definitely couldn't buy a coffee from a coffee shop for $2.99, could you?
Yeah, these days. Maybe one in a big Asda, but it'll be a shit coffee.
It'd be from a machine.
Yeah,
that has like every option on it, and you press it and you get that drink.
Yeah. And then you go to the bit where you get cutlery and there's flies, and it's not a great experience.
And spend $2.99 or your country's equivalent. It may just be $2.99 in whatever currency. I don't know. I haven't looked. Do that, and then you'll get a special link to get all the special episodes. You're not losing anything if you don't want to, because this is only going to be as extra, right? We're not cutting things. We're not
if
making...
it's $2.99 in any currency, you should subscribe via VPN in Canada, and then it'll be really cheap.
Maybe. I don't do that. But hopefully you'll be like, $2.99, yeah, why not? I want to support good creative people doing things that are good for the country and other things.
Who are you talking about
economy,
now?
Good for the economy. Keeping people in jobs.
Please help bolster the British economy by signing up to the premium version of the VG 24/7 Best Games Ever podcast, and you get an extended version of the pod. You get bits of this podcast that no other listeners are getting. So you'll get to find out what I think about stuff, which everyone needs to know, right? I think that's a pretty good deal. $2.99 a month just to know what my innermost thoughts are about fucking Assassin's Creed.
I'm gonna make Jim do a new jingle as well. For this segment, and you'll only hear that. Well, to be fair, you'll probably hear it in a promo for the whole thing. But also, you'll only hear it in the subscriber only bit.
Come up with some kind of song that can be one of the podcast jingles, but also a contender for Christmas #1 in the UK in 2024.
I don't know how I'm going to pull that off. Workday objectives.
I mean, fuck's sake.
Get a Christmas #1.
You tell me, like, I'm going to get my pay docked if it doesn't get into the top 50.
Performance requires improvement from that one, I imagine.
Right, okay. I got my work cut out for me. Okay, well, thank you very much for watching, listening. Please like and subscribe on YouTube. Send us a comment about how you think this episode went down and whether or not Mark deserved the win, or just grumble about the fact that Tom didn't win, etc. And on your podcast player of choice, please give us a 5-star review. It really helps us out. We're going to go now because we've got stuff to do and Prince of Persia comes out soon. Bye.